There are 54 productivity-based exercises in this book, Feel Good Productivity by Ali Abdaal, who, if you're watching this video, chances are you know who he is. And I'm going to give you my top 5 exercises in this book that I have started applying and have found really, really useful. And this book is all about productive ways in which to be more productive. And Ali Abdaal's hypothesis is that we are our most productive when we are feeling good, feeling happy, feeling content. And it's hard to disagree with him. I think back at times when I've been the most productive, and it has been times in which I have been at my most content. This book is split into 3 parts: energize, unblock, and sustain. And all 3 of those categories are geared towards helping you achieve some sense of feel-good productivity. Now, each part is split into 3 subsections, and each subsection is split into 6 different exercises that you can try. So there are 54 in total. And the 5 that I'm going to go through today cut across all 3 of those parts. The first exercise that I found really useful is the magic post-it note. And Ali describes watching Mary Poppins as a student with one of his friends, and the song A Spoonful of Sugar coming on that inspired him to write a sticky note saying, what would it look like if this were more fun? And based on the sentiment from Mary Poppins that you can make anything fun. He had this sticky note, he stuck it on his desk. Each time he came to do an activity, when it came to studying, he would make it more fun, like listening to music or gamifying it in some way. And he carried on this technique when applying it to work. So again, how can I make this slightly more fun? Even the most mundane tasks can be transformed in your mind to be slightly more fun if you just add an injection of creativity or imagination or gamification to what you are doing. And I have found this really, really useful, particularly listening to music or listening to podcasts as I'm doing something really, really mundane, or even gamifying how I do things so that I can make them better next time, and using that as a way of making it more fun to see just how good I can be at something. This has been so powerful for me that I've actually written this on my letterboard in my office at home to remind myself that each and everything I do, I embed this sense of how could it be more fun into my everyday routine. The second exercise that has really inspired me, it sounds a bit cheesy, but random acts of kindness was a section of the book that I read that I thought was really resonated with me, because as I read it, I started to realize that actually I'm not very intentional with random acts of kindness. Like, I'm very rarely intentionally doing something just purely to be kind. And now I'm starting to do that more. Studies have found that random acts of kindness make you more happy and increase your levels of endorphins, which in turn help you become more productive. So next time you're contemplating what to do for lunch, take your colleague out for lunch. Make them a cup of tea. Do something random just to be a better person, and accept that the byproduct of that will be that you yourself will feel better for it. So random acts of kindness is my second favorite exercise in this book. My third favorite exercise is the 10-10-10 rule. And quite simply, you know when someone says to you, oh, well, what's the worst that can happen? Well, the 10-10-10 rule really structures that question in a really formal way and helps you sit down and reflect on actually what is the worst that can happen, and puts things into a real sense of perspective. The idea behind it is that there's often this fear of paralysis for getting started on doing something. And we start thinking, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? And when we change our interpretation of the fear, we are able to overcome it, and we're likely to actually get started on whatever it is that's holding us back. So the idea is you ask yourself 3 questions. Will this matter in 10 minutes? Will this matter in 10 weeks? And will this matter in 10 years? And the chances are it may matter in the next 10 minutes. And if it's big enough, it may well matter in the next 10 weeks. But it probably won't matter in the next 10 years. And when you reduce the intensity of that fear and think about things in that perspective, you realize that your current fears actually aren't that significant and will not define you as a person. So if we go for an example, which is one that's given in the book, you don't get hired for a job. Happens to me all the time. Does it matter in the next 10 minutes? Well, probably, because I've been thinking about it and I put lots of energy into an interview and I didn't get the job. So yes, it does matter in the next 10 minutes. Does it matter in the next 10 weeks? Well, if it's a job that I really cared about and may have actually changed my life or was a significant step up in my career, then perhaps in the next 10 weeks, yes, I'll still be thinking about it and it will still be something that gets me down. Will it matter in the next 10 years? Well, probably not. Actually, I'll probably have changed jobs about 10 times in the next 10 years. Learning from the failure I had has stood me in good stead for significantly improving my interview technique in the following interview. So when you think about things from a bigger perspective and look at things from a longer term perspective, chances are you'll diminish that fear. So that's the 10-10-10 rule. The fourth exercise that I've been putting into practice is stop spotlighting. And this one is really significant for me. And I think a lot of us do this, where we overestimate what other people are actually thinking about and reacting about when it comes to our own actions and behaviors. Reality is no one really cares what we're doing, and actually people are mostly focused on what they're doing. And Ali gives a really good example of this in his book, where he makes a jibe around the dinner table with his friends. It's maybe slightly inappropriate and nobody really reacts to it in the way he was hoping. And he felt really bad for making this remark and maybe offending someone. And actually he came to learn that people didn't react or respond because they didn't really acknowledge it or really care about the remark itself. He realized he'd blown it out of all proportion because he was spotlighting himself. And this is backed by psychological research that we often worry too much about minor details about what we say or our appearance, and actually people don't really care. And if we go into situations knowing that people don't really care, we often unblock ourselves from starting something in the first place. And this exercise has really helped me start this YouTube channel and make these videos through lack of fear of judgment, whereas before I did have a fear of judgment. And actually I need to stop spotlighting myself and just start creating these videos. And the fifth exercise is the identity label, which is a really deep one for me, and I think it really resonated with me when I read it. So the identity label is about when you give yourself a negative label that you can't do something, it's often the thing that stops you from starting in the first place. So for example, if you say, I'm not a runner, I'm not good at maths, I can't play an instrument, I'm not a musician, I'm not a creative person. That label is often the thing that stops you from starting in the first place. Again, some psychological research has been done by a guy called Howard Becker in the 60s around criminality and around labeling someone a criminal creates this self-fulfilling prophecy in which they're more likely to reoffend, and it perpetuates the idea that they are going to behave in a negative manner. But just like negative labels can encourage negative behaviors, a positive label can encourage positive behaviors and help you overcome fears. So Ali uses the label that he's given himself as a lifelong learner to help encourage him to continually grow, continually approach things as a beginner, and encourage a learning and improvement mindset. So changing our labels can change our behavior, and that has been really significant for me personally, as someone who suffered from this from a very young age, being labeled by my parents as a certain thing or labeled by my teachers. Actually, you can change your mindset by labeling yourself in a different way in which you want to identify. I'd love to know if those 5 exercises resonated with you at all, or if you've read the book and one of the other 49 exercises have resonated with you. Let me know in the comments below what's worked for you and what hasn't. And if you want to know how to beat TikTok brain and how to increase your attention span, then do click on the video at the end of this one. As ever, if you enjoyed this one, please like or subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.